Okay, students, we're going to review for your quiz tomorrow with the unit circle. So here are some sheets that we're going to complete to help you get ready for tomorrow's quiz. It's not going to be very long. It's actually going to be shorter than the last one. So take your time. You're doing very well. I'm very proud of you all. So let's do this review. First things first, at the top, it says which trig functions are positive in these quadrants. Well, here's your quadrants. Remember what we said. All students take calculus. Okay? Remember, this is quadrant 1, and this is quadrant 2, and this is quadrant 3, and this is quadrant 4. Always counterclockwise. All the trig functions are positive in the first. Sine and cosecant, tangent and cotangent in the third, and cosine and secant are positive in those quadrants. So those are only positive in those quadrants. So let's fill this one. Quadrant 3, you have tangent and cotangent are positive. You could fill out the rest. All students take calculus. Okay, let's answer question number 1. If theta is greater than 0, doesn't that mean positive? So I'm going to put a little plus there. Which quadrants could the terminal side of theta be? In other words, the terminal side is for the reference angle. So we're talking about which ones are positive for tangent. Well, it's positive in the quadrant 1, and it's positive in quadrant 3. Okay? And remember, it's tangent and it's reciprocal, not just tangent. But we use the first letter of the main trig functions. You could answer the others on your own. You're going to do the evens for homework. Number 3, if sine is greater than 0, again, doesn't that mean positive? So I'm going to put a little plus there. Which quadrants could the terminal side of theta be? Well, again, it's positive in quadrant 1. And where else is sine positive? In quadrant 2. And it's sine and cosecant. Okay, you'll do number 4. Let's do question 5. Look what it's asking for. It's asking for the exact value. So we're going to highlight that. Exact value. So the exact value of these functions. And I'm going to do number 5 first. Well, the first thing we have to remember is all students take calculus. And we have to determine what quadrant is 150. Well, if you look up here, 90, 180. So it's going to be in quadrant 2. So let's put down quadrant 2. And in quadrant 2, is sine positive or negative? It is positive. So I'm going to put positive. Now, how do I find the reference angle for that? Well, I subtract this from 180. So 180 minus 150 is equal to 30 degrees. So we're looking for the sine of 30 degrees, which right now you should have memorized. It's very easy, is just 1/2. If you can't remember that, I recommend you draw a little triangle over here. So I'm going to draw a right triangle here. And I'm going to call this one 30 and this one 60. Remember, across 30 is 1, hypotenuse is 2, square root of 3 across on that one. Okay? So then you're going to do some of the others. I also want to do number 9. So I did number 5. I did 1. I did 3. I'm going to do number 9 because I want you to do the evens. Okay, for number 9, again, we're talking about the tangent, and it's 240 degrees. So I'm going in the positive direction because it's plus. So I'm going to go 90, 180, 270. So it's got to be in quadrant 3. See, because it's going to fall in here somewhere. So quadrant 3. The next question, is tangent positive in quadrant 3? Yes. So I put a plus there. Now, how do I find my reference angle? Well, now I have to subtract from this. From this, I have to subtract 180. So I do 240 minus 180 is equal to 60. My triangle is right here. So I'm looking for the tangent of 60. So it is opposite over hypotenuse. And that's just the square root of 3. Okay? Really square root of 3 over 1, but it's just square root of 3. Okay? Now let's jump to 13. But the difference with 13 is that now we're talking in radians. Remember, radians start here. 0 radians, half radians, pi or half radians is pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and back here around is 2 pi. So this is really 1.3 repeating. Well, that's a little less than half. So what quadrant that's going to be, because we're going in the positive direction? So that's going to be quadrant 3. My next question is, in quadrant 3, is sign positive? No, it's negative. So let's put a negative. Now we have to determine what angle that is, because we want the exact value. So it has to be a fraction, not a decimal. A fraction, a whole number, or radical. So that's the only way you can get our exact value. So we're looking for the reference angle, and that's in the third quadrant. Well, we subtract from this, we subtract pi, because pi is 180. So we have 4 pi over 3 minus pi over 1, which I have to multiply top and bottom by 3, which makes it 3 pi. 4 pi minus 3 pi is pi over 3. And if you remember correctly, what I do is I put a little note here that I'm looking for 60 degrees to make it easy for me. So I'm looking for the sine of 60 degrees, and I could go back over here, opposite over hypotenuse. But remember, it's going to be negative. So I'm going to negative square root of 3 over 2. And I don't have to do anything to that because my radical is in the numerator. So there's my answer for 13. Now I'm going to go to 15. Okay, like I said, you're going to do the evens. Okay, so I'm just going to do some of the odd ones. Let's look at this one. Okay, for 15, okay, that is 7 over 6. Well, I'm not sure what 7 over 6 is. So let's see what 7 over 6 is. 7 divided by 6 equals 1.1, which is between 1 and 1.5. So that's going to be in quadrant. In what quadrant? Well, it's over 1 and less than 1.5. So that's quadrant 3. Well, in quadrant 3, is sign positive or negative? Well, that has to be negative. Okay. So same thing here. Remember, this is in quadrant 3, which is greater than 180. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 7 pi over 6 minus pi over 1, which I have to multiply top and bottom by 6. So that's 7 minus 6 is 1 pi over 6, right? Well, isn't that 30 degrees? Isn't pi over 6 30 degrees? Because 180 divided by 6 is 30, so this is 30 degrees. My answer is going to be negative, so I'm looking for the sine of 30. That's easy. That's 1/2, but it happens to be negative. So it's negative 1/2. And there you go. So we've done this part. Now we could go to part number 2, another sheet that you're going to have to finish to get ready for your quiz on Wednesday. It's going to only be like 10 questions, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay? For this one here, we're going to answer some of the odd ones because you're also going to do the even ones on this page. So let's start with the top one. Again, we're looking for the exact value. And remember, it's the unit circle. So the exact value, and it's the unit circle. Okay? And down below, we're going to do, okay? Down below, we're going to do some examples with a point, because that's going to be on your quiz, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. Okay? We're going to use something like 7/9, and then we're going to do -3/9. Okay? And we're going to use that point to find some exact value, but we're going to do that after. First, let's go over here to the cotangent of pi/3. Okay, so we're going to do that one first. To find the exact value, what do we have to do? Well, we have to find out where that falls in. Well, isn't that really like 180? Isn't that like 60 degrees? So I'm going to put a little 60 degrees here to remind me, and that's going to be in quadrant 1. Everything is positive in quadrant 1. So again, I'm just going to do over here, I'm going to draw a little triangle, the same one I drew before, and I'm just going to draw it here to make my life easier. I'm going to make this 30, make this one 60, this is 1/2, and this is the square root of 3. So I'm looking for the cotangent. Remember that the tangent is opposite over adjacent. Well, the cotangent, okay, is adjacent over opposite. So we're doing the reverse. So instead of doing, so we're looking for the cotangent here of pi/3. So I'm going to look for the adjacent, because again, that's 60. So I'm not doing opposite. I'm doing the opposite, 1 over the square root of 3. Oops, 1 over the square root of 3. Okay, because that's a 1. So let me fix that, because I wrote that wrong. I don't want you to be confused. It's not a square root. It's a 1 square root of 3. I can't leave it like that, so multiply by square root of 3, square root of 3. So my answer is the square root of 3/3, because I've got to get rid of that radical in the bottom. And there's my cotangent, adjacent over hypotenuse, because it's the reciprocal of tangent. Okay, let's skip over to number 5. For number 5, it's going to say the sine of -5/4. Well, guess what? Now I'm going in reverse order. Now I've got to draw it like this. And remember, now I'm going this way, not this way. I'm going clockwise. Well, that's 1.25. So 1.25, this is a half, or pi/2, 3pi/2. So this is 1.25, which is in here. So this is going to go this way. It's going to go around like this and like this, right? Well, the first thing I have to do, that's negative. So I have to find the coterminal angle, because I need it to be positive so that I can determine the function. Well, the coterminal to that is -5pi/4 plus 2pi/1, because that's how we do coterminal from a previous section. Multiply top and bottom, right, by 4. So now I have -5pi plus 8pi/4, which gives me 3pi/4. Okay, now remember, this is in quadrant 2. Okay, and in quadrant 2 is sine positive or negative. Well, in quadrant 2, sine is positive. So even though we're going negative, my answer better be positive. So now, because I'm in the second quadrant, I have to subtract this from pi, because this is my coterminal angle. And I need, this is an E. Now I need my reference angle. Well, I do pi over 1 minus 3 pi over 4, right? So multiply top and bottom by 4 on this side. And I have 4 pi over 4 minus 3 pi over 4, which gives me pi over 4. Now remember, that's really 45 degrees. I always do that because it's easier for me to think in degrees. So what am I looking for? The sine of 45 degrees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a triangle here to remind me, which is one that you should know, 45, 45, 1, 1, square root of 2. So the sine, remember it's going to be positive, of 45 is opposite over hypotenuse. Well, the sine of pi over 4 is positive 1 over the square root of 2, which I have to convert by multiplying square root of 2 over square root of 2. So my final answer is the square root of 2 over 2. And that has to be positive. Easy. See? So if you remember this, no matter what sign or which direction you're going, what quadrant it's in determines the sign. Okay, let's do this one. This one's a lot easier because this is 3 pi over 2. Okay, that's not an eddy quadrant because that's really 1.5. Remember, when we do this, we have 0 pi, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and then back to 2 pi. So this is right here. It's not an eddy quadrant. It's actually right on the y-axis. Well, isn't that 0, negative 1? And didn't we say that the first part is the cosine? The x is the cosine, and the second one is the sine. So that means this, okay, is going to be what? It's just going to be this value, cosine sine. So this is actually equal to negative 1. And there's your answer for that question. Very easy to do, okay? You just have to remember that. Now let's look at this. They give us a values here, and let's say they want you to find the cosine, okay, of theta with these values. Remember, this is x, and this is y. But we already learned from up here that the first value is going to be your cosine, and the second one's going to be your sine. So this is just this, same thing you did in IXL. So the cosine of this is just this value, 7 over 9. Okay? And there's my answer. Let's say they said they want the tangent. Well, the tangent is sine over cosine. So that would be negative 3 over 9 divided by 7 over 9. Well, when you flip this, the 9s cancel, right? And you have negative 3 over 7. So the tangent of this is put this over this. You can put it on the calculator, you get that. But let's say they give you, and they want you to find the cosecant, okay, of this using this. Well, that's easy. All you have to do is flip this, okay, because this is the sine. And actually, when you give your final answer, you want to simplify it to whatever it is. If you were to say the sine, you'd have to simplify this to negative 1/3. But if they want the cosecant, which is the reciprocal, it is 9 over negative 3, which is just negative 3, because you're doing the reciprocal of the sine. And that's all you need for your quiz on Wednesday. Take care, continue doing your work, and submit your assignments. You all are doing fantastic. I'm very proud of you all. Hopefully, sometime next year, I'll be able to see you and congratulate you on your work. Take care. From Mr. Soto, be safe.